Imagine watching flames swallow a port in your own home state. Warehouses collapse, ships burn at anchor, smoke covers the river, and across the water, inside a captured American fort, surrender turns into slaughter. The commander of the British expedition is Benedict Arnold, the former American hero whose name has become another word for treason. For more than 2 centuries, the story has sounded simple. Arnold returned to Connecticut, burned New London, and ordered the massacre at Fort Griswold. But there is a problem. When the killing began inside the fort, Arnold was somewhere else. That does not make him innocent. It makes the story far more disturbing, because the deeper I looked into the raid on New London, the more two questions refused to disappear. Was Benedict Arnold really responsible for what happened inside Fort Griswold? And how did one of America's greatest battlefield heroes become the man who led British troops back into his native Connecticut? To answer either question, we have to stop looking at Arnold only as the villain at the end of the story, and look again at the hero at the beginning. Years before anyone cursed his name, Arnold was exactly the kind of commander every revolution desperately needs: bold, restless, almost indifferent to danger. At Saratoga, while other officers hesitated, Arnold attacked, driving American troops forward through smoke and gunfire, fighting with a violence that bordered on recklessness, taking a devastating wound to the same leg already injured at Quebec. The American victory at Saratoga helped persuade France to enter the war. Without French money, soldiers, and warships, American independence would have been far less certain. Here lies the first paradox. The man history remembers for betraying the revolution may first have helped save it. So what transformed a celebrated general into Britain's most notorious American officer? Popular history offers 3 words: greed, ambition, revenge. All three mattered, but betrayal rarely begins in a single moment. More often, it grows quietly. One promotion given to someone else, one dispute over money, one investigation that refuses to end, one sacrifice that seems to go unrecognized. After Saratoga, Arnold expected gratitude. Instead, he found politics. Congress questioned his accounts. Junior officers advanced ahead of him. His enemies accused him of using command for personal advantage. Some accusations were exaggerated, others were not. Arnold was brave. He was also proud, financially reckless, and convinced the nation owed him more than it had given. Each grievance fed the next. Disappointment hardened into resentment, and resentment has a way of changing how a man remembers his own sacrifices. By 1780, he crossed the line. While commanding West Point, he secretly negotiated with Britain and offered to surrender the fortress. When the plot was exposed, Arnold escaped to the British lines. America now hated him, but Britain didn't fully trust him either. Why would it? A man willing to betray one side might someday betray another. Arnold understood that words would never be enough. He needed to prove his value as a British commander. In September 1781, that opportunity arrived. New London, Connecticut, was not Arnold's birthplace. He had been born nearby, in Norwich, but it stood in the landscape of his youth. More importantly, it was a major privateering base packed with vessels, warehouses, and military supplies that threatened British commerce. No British officer knew the region better. Arnold understood its roads, its river crossings, its defenses, its harbor. Everything that had once made him valuable to the American cause now made him uniquely dangerous to it. Before sunrise on September 6, 1781, British warships approached the Connecticut coast. The expedition had a clear military purpose: cripple New London's privateering network, destroy its supplies and shipping, and escape before American reinforcements could gather. British commanders may also have hoped that violence in the north would create confusion while Washington and the French marched toward Virginia. Arnold divided the expedition. His column landed on the New London side of the Thames River. A second force, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Edmund Eyre, landed across the water near Groton and moved against Fort Griswold. New London was lightly defended. Arnold's troops entered the town and began destroying warehouses, ships, and military stores. Fire spread far beyond what anyone could control. Smoke rose over the harbor. Across the river, the operation went wrong. Fort Griswold did not surrender. About 160 American defenders stood behind its earthworks under Lieutenant Colonel William Ledyard. Advancing against them were roughly 800 British regulars, loyalists, and German auxiliaries. The numbers suggested an easy victory. The ground said otherwise. The attackers had to climb steep slopes under musket and artillery fire. The defenders threw back the first attackers, but more troops pressed forward. British officers fell. Eyre was mortally wounded. Major William Montgomery was killed reaching the defenses. The fight lasted only about 40 minutes. It was unexpectedly fierce and unexpectedly costly. Then the British broke into the fort. What followed became the darkest part of Arnold's legend. Most tellings reduce it to one sentence. Benedict Arnold ordered a massacre. But was he even there? No. At the moment Fort Griswold fell, Arnold was not inside it, not leading the assault, not standing beside Ledyard, not directing the soldiers who forced their way over the walls. He was across the river in New London overseeing the destruction of the port. That fact does not clear his name, but it changes the question. When Ledyard saw that resistance was hopeless, he surrendered. By most American accounts, he offered his sword to the British officer entering the fort. Moments later, Ledyard was killed with that same weapon. Exactly who struck the blow remains disputed. What isn't disputed is what came after. Discipline collapsed, and American defenders were shot and bayoneted after resistance had already ended. The attackers had just suffered heavy losses in a short, brutal assault. Their senior officers were dead or dying. Rage, confusion, and broken command did the rest. But explanation is not absolution. Arnold commanded the expedition. His decisions brought the troops to New London and Groton. He carried responsibility for the operation as a whole, even without proof that he personally ordered what happened inside the fort. That is the uncomfortable answer the familiar story avoids. He was not there for the massacre. He could not walk away from it either, and while New London burned and Fort Griswold fell, another irony was already taking shape, far to the south. George Washington kept marching toward Virginia. By evening, New London lay in ruins. Warehouses had collapsed into smoking rubble. Ships that had preyed on British commerce were blackened wrecks. Fort Griswold had fallen. On paper, the raid looked like a complete British success. Arnold had proved he could still plan and execute a difficult operation. He had proved his usefulness to Britain. Or had he? Because while Arnold was winning the last battle, history remembers him for Washington was quietly moving toward the campaign that would decide the war. The American and French armies kept marching south. The French fleet held the Chesapeake. Cornwallis grew more isolated by the day. If British commanders hoped the attack on Connecticut would distract Washington or pull him back north, it failed completely. He did not turn around. He did not recall his army. He did not abandon Virginia. 6 weeks after New London burned, Cornwallis surrendered at Yorktown. Suddenly, Arnold's victory looked very different. He had destroyed a port. He had captured a fort. He had deepened the hatred of the country he once served, but he had not changed the course of the war. That may be the cruelest irony of Benedict Arnold's life. He sacrificed everything that had once defined him for a victory that could not change the outcome of the war. His old country would never forgive him. His new country would never fully embrace him. In the end, he belonged completely to neither. None of this excuses Arnold. His grievances didn't force him to betray West Point. Congress didn't make him accept a British commission. Pride, injury, debt, and resentment may explain his road, but Arnold chose every decisive step along it. Yet history becomes poorer when it reduces an extraordinary life to a single word: hero, traitor. The label he's remembered by is deserved. It is also incomplete. Before Arnold betrayed the revolution, he fought for it with a courage few could match. Before he led British troops into Connecticut, he had helped win the victory that brought France into the war. That contradiction is why his story still unsettles us. The most important question may not be whether Benedict Arnold deserved to be remembered as America's greatest traitor. Perhaps it is this: how does a nation lose one of its greatest heroes before it ever loses him to the enemy? The flames that consumed New London lasted only a single day. The fire that consumed Benedict Arnold had been burning for years. And that may be the real tragedy history asks us to remember.